At 2:37 p.m. on August 17, 1944, Sergeant Lafayette Poole stood in the turret of his M4 Sherman, watching a column of 30 Panzer IV tanks from the 2nd SS Division das Reich advancing along a dusty road near Chambois, France. It looked like another suicide mission. The German tanks were 1,200 meters away, well beyond the effective range of the American 75mm guns. The doctrine was clear: wait for the enemy to reach 800 meters, aim for a weak spot in the armor, and pray to penetrate before being destroyed. The statistics were brutal. For every German panzer destroyed, the Allies lost an average of 5 Shermans. The Germans knew this. Their commanders had studied American tactics, knew every limitation of Allied artillery, and openly mocked it. But that afternoon, something different was loaded into the cannons of the 3rd Armored Battalion. It was something German engineers considered technically impossible. Something a Wehrmacht general, upon hearing the rumors, would have called an American fantasy: ammunition that chased its target. Poole gave the order: fire at will with the specials. The first shot tore through the air. The ammunition did not fly in a straight line. It curved. The projectile hit the lead panzer not in the front, where the 80mm armor might have resisted, but on the top of the turret, where only 16mm of steel protected the crew. The German tank exploded in a ball of fire. What happened in the next 60 seconds would forever change tank warfare in Europe and lead to the destruction of 30 German armored vehicles that never saw the attack coming, because their tactics had become obsolete in a single instant. The project for that ammunition had begun in 1942 with a problem that seemed insoluble. Sherman tanks were inferior to German panzers in almost every respect. A Panzer IV had 80mm of frontal armor. A Tiger I had 100mm. A Sherman had only 51mm. The German 88mm gun could destroy a Sherman from 2,000 meters away, while the American 75mm gun needed to get within 500 meters to stand a chance of penetrating a Panzer IV. By that distance, the Sherman would usually already be in flames. The conventional solution was simple: build better tanks. Heavier, more armored, with bigger guns. But that would take years, and the war was happening now. In March 1943, the U.S. Army Ordnance Department called an emergency meeting at Aberdeen Proving Ground. The question was direct: is it possible to make ammunition that doesn't need a direct shot? The initial response from engineers was unanimous: impossible. Anti-tank ammunition needed speed and mass to penetrate armor. Any tracking mechanism would add weight, reduce speed, and kill penetration power. Furthermore, the rotation of a 75mm shell was 3,000 revolutions per minute. Any electronics would be instantly destroyed by centrifugal force. But Dr. Charles Stark Draper from MIT did not accept impossible. His team worked for 14 months in absolute secrecy, developing a revolutionary system: a projectile that tracked the target mechanically rather than electronically. The ammunition had no sensors or radios. It had movable fins controlled by miniaturized gyroscopes encapsulated in hardened steel. The result was called HVAPT, High Velocity Armor Piercing Tracking. The ammunition worked by gyroscopic inertia. Upon being fired, the rear fins automatically adjusted during flight, correcting the trajectory toward the nearest metallic mass. It wasn't remote-controlled, it was guided by pure physics. In April 1944, Aberdeen Proving Ground tested the new ammunition against captured German tank hulls. 10 shots at 1,500 meters. 10 hits. Every single one struck the top of the turrets, where the armor was weakest. The War Department canceled the rest of the tests and started mass production immediately. But there was a critical problem: absolute secrecy. If an HVAPT round fell into German hands, especially those of Krupp engineers, they could reinforce turret tops or develop countermeasures. The decision was clear: HVAPT ammunition would only be used in combats where German recovery was impossible, in Allied-controlled terrain or situations of rapid advance. In July 1944, Major General Maurice Rose, commander of the 3rd Armored Division, received a sealed box at his headquarters near St. Lo. Inside were 2,000 projectiles marked only as M93 restricted. The orders were explicit: use only in decisive combats, mandatory recovery of any unexploded rounds, and an absolute ban on mentioning the ammunition over radio communications. The operational codename was Track Bomb. The 3rd Armored Division was the perfect choice. Commanded by Rose, one of the most aggressive American armored generals, the division was at the vanguard of Operation Cobra, the offensive to break German lines in Normandy. On August 1, 1944, 5 Sherman tank platoons received 50 HVAPT rounds each. The crews were trained in absolute secret. The ammunition was stored separately, marked with a red stripe. Sergeant Lafayette Poole, commanding a platoon of 5 Shermans, received personal instructions from Colonel Leander Doane: these rounds are not for training. They are not for reconnaissance. They are for killing panzers. And they are to be used when everything else fails. By August 10, the 3rd Armored Division was advancing toward Argentan, closing the ring on German forces in the Falaise Pocket. But German resistance was fierce. The 2nd SS Division Das Reich, one of the Wehrmacht's elite units, defended the escape route with 116 Panzer IV and Panther tanks. The American Shermans were technologically and numerically outmatched. In 3 days of combat, the 3rd Division lost 47 tanks. The loss rate was unsustainable. On August 16, General Rose issued a direct order: special ammunition authorized against enemy armored formations. The track bomb was about to enter the fray. On the morning of August 17, 1944, Allied intelligence detected a large German armored column moving toward Chambois. It was the 2nd SS trying to break the encirclement. 30 Panzer IVs, 8 Panthers, and approximately 200 infantry vehicles. Sergeant Lafayette Poole and his platoon were ordered to intercept and delay the advance until reinforcements arrived. 5 Shermans against 38 German tanks. But Poole had something the Germans didn't know existed. At 2:37 p.m., the distance was 1,200 meters. Outside conventional range, but well within reach for the track bombs. Poole gave the order: all tanks. Red ammo. Aim for the turrets. Fire at will. 5 75mm guns fired almost simultaneously. The result was devastating. The HVAPT rounds didn't fly straight. Their gyroscopic fins adjusted the trajectory mid-flight, curving subtly toward the metallic mass of the panzers. It was enough to hit the turret tops where the armor was thin. The first panzer exploded when the projectile pierced the 16mm roof and detonated the internal ammunition. The second tank was hit in the side of the turret, and the third took a shot through the commander's hatch. 3 tanks destroyed in 6 seconds. The German column stopped, confused. Their commanders didn't understand how they were being hit from 1,200 meters, a distance that should have been safe from Shermans. Poole reloaded. Second salvo. Now. 5 more shots. For more panzers in flames. The German commander, Hauptsturmführer Klaus Becker, tried to reorganize, ordering dispersion and evasive maneuvers. But it was too late. Over the next 60 seconds, what should have been a balanced battle turned into a one-sided massacre. The track bombs ignored German defensive tactics. It didn't matter if the panzers were moving or presenting their thick frontal armor, the rounds adjusted and hit the weak points. In less than 2 minutes, 14 panzers were destroyed or immobilized. The German crews began abandoning their tanks, realizing the rules of armored combat had fundamentally changed. At 2:42 p.m., 8 Panthers emerged from a side forest, trying to flank Poole's Shermans. Panthers were far more dangerous than Panzer IVs, 100mm frontal armor and long-range guns. But Poole still had 20 track bombs. Focus on the Panthers. Red ammo. The duel was brutal. The Panthers fired first, destroying one of Poole's Shermans in a catastrophic explosion. But the remaining 4 tanks responded with track bombs. 6 shots. 5 Panthers hit. 1 shell pierced the rear engine compartment of a Panther, causing a fire that reached the ammunition. The tank exploded with such force that the turret was thrown 15 meters away. By 2:50 p.m., just 13 minutes after the start of the engagement, the armored column of the 2nd SS Das Reich was destroyed. 30 Panthers and Panthers were in flames. Over 200 crewmen were dead or wounded. And the Germans had no idea what had hit them. In the days following the battle at Chambois, German intelligence began to notice the shift. Field reports described Shermans destroying Panthers at impossible distances with inexplicable hit rates. Veteran tank commanders reported projectiles that seemed to follow their evasive movements. Colonel Hermann Bulk reported directly to the High Command, "The Americans have developed something new. Our tanks are being destroyed by shots that shouldn't be possible." The Abwehr, German military intelligence, launched an urgent investigation. They collected shell fragments and interrogated prisoners, but the answers were frustrating. An August 25 report dismissed the claims of curving shells and intelligent bullets as technically implausible, likely combat exaggeration or misinformation. General Heinz Guderian sarcastically remarked that if the Americans put gyroscopes in 75mm shells, they must have put entire factories inside every Sherman. By the end of 1944, 47 American factories were producing 15,000 HVAPT rounds per day. In September, the track bomb found its ideal targets during Operation Market Garden. Heavy Tiger II tanks began to be destroyed at distances the Germans considered safe. German confidence in their technological superiority was disintegrating. Between August 1944 and March 1945, track bombs were responsible for 60% of German tank destructions, despite representing only 18% of the ammunition fired. The efficiency was 400% higher than conventional rounds. German morale plummeted, tanks that once advanced with confidence now hesitated. At 3:47 a.m. on March 2, 1945, the 3rd Armored Division crossed the Remagen Bridge over the Rhine. Sergeant Lafayette Poole was there in his 4th Sherman. The previous 3 had been destroyed in combat. But that morning, the fight was in an urban environment, not against tanks. Poole had survived 81 combat engagements and destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, but his Sherman was out of special ammunition. During the fight for the bridge, a German Panzerfaust hit Poole's Sherman in the side. The tank caught fire. Poole was severely wounded, losing a leg, but he survived. He had been the first American tank commander to use track bombs in combat. Between August 1944 and May 1945, over 4.2 million HVAPT rounds were produced. The program cost $89 million, a fortune at the time, but it fundamentally changed the balance of power. Against German armor, tracking shells required only 3.2 shots per kill, compared to 8.7 for conventional ammo. In his diary, General George Patton wrote, "The new ammunition is devastating. The Germans still have better tanks, but now it doesn't matter. We've created a new method of warfare." The Germans, who mocked the idea of a projectile that follows the target, never developed an equivalent and paid for it with the loss of hundreds of tanks and, ultimately, the war itself. Sergeant Lafayette Poole lived until 1991. He never spoke publicly about the special ammunition, keeping the secret until the technology was declassified in 1958. The miniaturized gyroscope technology developed for those shells would later be used in guided missiles, inertial navigation systems, and eventually, modern smartphones. Sergeant Poole once called the track bomb the most unfair thing I ever took to a fight. He was right. But in war, fair is whoever wins. And the 30 SS Panthers that turned into rotten apples at Chambois never knew what hit them.